This is it, Eagles Nation. Week 5 is here, and it's not just another Sunday. It's a measuring stick. The Birds are undefeated, standing at 4-0. But let's be honest, this hasn't been dominance. This has been survival. 4 games, 4 tight battles, and yet Philly has found a way to stand tall every single time. That's what defines this team: resilience, grit, and the refusal to break when the game hangs in the balance. Now comes Denver, a team crossing the country, walking into the fortress that is the LIX, where chaos rains down from nearly 70,000 voices. The stage is set. Strength against strength, red zone firepower against red zone resistance, a test of will and identity. So, Eagles fans, strap in, because this matchup is more than just about keeping the 0 in the loss column. It's about proving that ugly wins can transform into statement victories. If you're ready to ride with me through this breakdown, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's hear it loud and proud. Fly, Eagles, fly. This Week 5 matchup against the Denver Broncos carries a lot of weight, not only because the Eagles are undefeated at 4-0, but because the performance so far hasn't lived up to the expectations that come with that record. Statistically, this is one of the strangest starts we've seen in NFL history. Philadelphia has yet to play a complete game where both sides of the ball dominate for all 60 minutes. Yet here they are, standing tall without a single loss. That's the story of this team so far. Flashes of brilliance, resilience when it matters most, and a knack for finding ways to win. Looking at this Broncos matchup, the Eagles enter with clear advantages. First, they're better rested. Denver had to play on Monday Night Football and now has to travel cross-country to face Philly in a 1 p.m. Eastern slot. Add to that the fact that Lincoln Financial Field has turned into one of the toughest environments in football, 13 straight wins at the LIX, nearly 70,000 fans creating chaos every single snap, and the odds swing further toward the Birds. Denver, by contrast, has been abysmal on the road, losing 7 of their last 8 games away from Mile High. Vegas seems to agree. Philadelphia opened as a 4.5-point favorite, now sitting at 3.5 depending on the sportsbook. The over-under is 43.5, which tells you odds makers expect a defensive battle. And make no mistake, this is strength versus strength in the trenches. You've got Denver's stout defensive front against one of the most dominant offensive lines in football. You've got A.J. Brown lining up across from Patrick Surtain in what promises to be a heavyweight duel. And of course, the Broncos' strong rushing attack, fueled by J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, running right into an Eagles front that has been inconsistent stopping the run. Denver has been a mixed bag under Sean Payton. They beat the Titans in Week 1, lost a tight game to the Colts, fell just short
against the Chargers, and then blew out a Bengals team missing Joe Burrow. On paper, they've yet to prove themselves against playoff-caliber opponents. Philadelphia, on the other hand, has stacked quality wins despite their flaws. A 24-20 grinder against Dallas, a 20-7 road triumph over Kansas City, a comeback eruption versus the Rams, and then a weather-tested 31-25 win in Tampa Bay. The Birds have handled business against real competition, even if the numbers say otherwise. And about those numbers, they're shocking. Statistically, the Eagles are one of the worst 4-0 teams ever recorded. Outgained by the Chiefs, Rams, and Buccaneers, Philly sits at a -327 yardage differential. Since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970, only 13 teams have started 4-0 while being outgained. And the 2012 Arizona Cardinals were the only team worse than this year's Eagles in that department. That Cardinals team completely collapsed afterward, winning just one more game the rest of the season. No one in Philadelphia wants to see history repeat itself. Yet there's more to the story. Despite those ugly stats, the Eagles are number 1 in red zone efficiency, 11 trips, 11 touchdowns. They've taken care of the football with 0 turnovers through 4 games. That's a championship brand of football, even if the offense has lacked rhythm. Defensively, Vic Fangio's unit has been up and down, but the Birds thrive in close games, battle-tested by years of grinding through big moments. And in the NFL, that matters just as much as raw numbers. So the question becomes, what will give this Sunday? Denver owns the top red zone defense in the league, while Philly boasts the number 1 red zone offense. Something has to break. If the Eagles can shut down the Broncos' run game and force Bo Nix to win with his arm, history suggests that plays right into Philadelphia's hands. Nix has already thrown 4 interceptions this year and has struggled against quality opponents. On offense, it's time for Jalen Hurts and this unit to find rhythm, establish the ground game, and start scheming ways to get A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert more involved. The pieces are there. The coaching staff has shown in the past that they can make adjustments as the season goes on. And despite everything, the Eagles are still sitting undefeated at 4-0. The question isn't whether they can win ugly, it's whether this team can elevate before the tougher stretch of the schedule arrives later in the year. Because eventually, winning ugly won't be enough. And here's where things get even more intriguing. Because while the record looks perfect at 4-0, the cracks underneath the surface are impossible to ignore. Since that season-opening win against Dallas, the Eagles have been outgained in every single game. Against Kansas City, they gave up 78 more yards. Against the Rams, 68 more yards. Against Tampa Bay, a staggering 176 more yards. That's not exactly the picture of dominance we expected from a team with Super Bowl aspirations. Digging deeper into the stats, the Eagles rank dead last among all 148 teams in NFL history that started 4-0 since the merger in 1970 in several key categories. Last in total yards gained, last in yards per play, last in yards per completion. They're also near the bottom in sack rate and point differential. For a franchise that prides itself on physical dominance in the trenches and explosive playmaking, those rankings are a wake-up call. This is not sustainable football over the long haul. But there's another side to the story. Sometimes numbers don't tell the full truth about what a team is capable of. Think about powerhouse college programs like Nick Saban's Alabama or Kirby Smart's Georgia, teams that didn't always play perfect football every Saturday but always found ways to win. The Eagles have that same championship DNA. They've been battle-tested through the ups and downs of recent seasons, and they know how to close out tight games. That ability alone is why this team has a chance to overcome statistical oddities and rewrite the narrative as the year progresses. And it's not like the schedule has been a cakewalk. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find many 4-0 teams in history that faced a tougher early slate. Wins over Dallas, Kansas City, the Rams, and Tampa Bay are no joke. These are playoff-level opponents, not bottom feeders. The Eagles may not have looked flashy, but they've beaten real competition, and that deserves credit. Over the next month, the schedule eases slightly in terms of opposing quarterbacks, giving this offense a window to finally find its identity before the stretch run heats up again later in the season. That's the critical point right now, identity. What exactly is this Eagles offense? They've been efficient in the red zone, sure, but between the 20s, they've struggled to generate explosive plays. The ground game hasn't consistently set the tone, and Jalen Hurts has yet to look fully in rhythm. You can already see frustration bubbling with A.J. Brown, who hasn't had the kind of breakout game we all know he's capable of. It's only a matter of time before he demands more targets. And honestly, he should. A receiver of his caliber can change games, and the Eagles have to find ways to scheme him open, even against elite corners like Patrick Surtain. The tight end position is another key. Dallas Goedert has been quiet so far, and this week presents a golden opportunity. Denver's linebackers are the weak link in an otherwise elite defense, and exploiting that matchup could be the difference between grinding drives and explosive plays. Combine that with Saquon Barkley's ability as both a runner and a pass catcher, and suddenly you have options to stress the Broncos in areas they're vulnerable. And let's not forget the psychological edge of playing at home. 13 straight wins at Lincoln Financial Field, over 379 days since the Eagles last tasted defeat on their own turf. That's not just coincidence, that's a fortress. When you've got nearly 70,000 fans creating chaos, it changes the way opponents execute. It rattles quarterbacks. It forces false starts. It builds momentum that snowballs into victories. Denver, meanwhile, has been dreadful away from home, winning just once in their last 8 road games. If ever there was a game for the Eagles to get their offense rolling, this is the one. At the end of the day, we're staring at a fascinating contrast, a Philadelphia team that is statistically underperforming yet finding ways to win, and a Denver team that looks strong on paper but has yet to prove itself against top-tier competition. One of those realities has to give this Sunday. Will the Eagles finally put together a complete performance, silencing the critics who call them the worst 4-0 team ever, or will Denver expose weaknesses that numbers have already suggested? Eagles fans, I want to hear from you. Do you believe this team can overcome the ugly stats and grow into a true Super Bowl contender? Or do you think these cracks will widen as the season goes on? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you believe the birds will keep the streak alive, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next. Go Eagles, we can get to the Super Bowl. Because here's the reality, being undefeated only buys you so much time. At some point, the Eagles will need to answer the big question. Can they evolve from a team that survives into a team that dominates? Right now, they've been masters of survival, capitalizing on turnovers, excelling in the red zone, and leaning on a defense that makes plays when it has to. But the margin for error shrinks as the season progresses, especially with a gauntlet of opponents waiting later in the year. That's why this Broncos game is more than just another regular season matchup. It's an opportunity to send a message to themselves, to the league, to every analyst who's been saying Philadelphia's undefeated record is a mirage. The best teams don't just stack wins, they stack statement wins. And this week, in front of the home crowd, the Eagles have a chance to flip the script, take control from the first whistle, and remind everyone why this roster was built to chase a Lombardi trophy. There's a reason players like Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts are in Philadelphia. They're playmakers, they're leaders, and they're here for moments like this. The offensive line is one of the most respected in the NFL, and if they can impose their will against Denver's front, it changes everything. On the defensive side, shutting down the Broncos' rushing attack forces Bo Nix into uncomfortable situations where mistakes are more likely. That's the formula. That's Eagles football at its best. Control the trenches, control the game. And let's be clear, this fan base is hungry. 13 straight wins at the LINQ is no accident. It's energy, passion, and noise shaking through the stadium every single Sunday. That's the difference between Philadelphia and everywhere else. When the Eagles take the field, they aren't just playing with 11 guys. They're playing with an army of fans behind them, ready to push them over the top. So here we are, staring at a moment that could define how the rest of the season feels. Will the Eagles take that next step, put together a complete performance, and start looking like the powerhouse we all know they can be? Or will the story remain the same, scraping by, leaving everyone wondering when the bubble might burst? Eagles fans, this is where I turn it over to you. What's your gut telling you heading into Sunday? Are we about to witness a statement win, or are these struggles going to linger a little longer?